Hi everyone, welcome to this other presentation for the regional week. This week presented by Roto. We have Terry Adamson here, who's going to be our host for this presentation. So Terry, you can take over.
Thanks, Steph. Good afternoon, everybody. So today we are in Ontario. We're going to be talking with a group of panelists here about installation, installers, training, and how they're dealing with that in Ontario. So there's no question that installation of windows and doors is becoming a much more complex item to deal with for manufacturers, dealers, installers, builders, trainers, and of course, a concern for homeowners looking for a quality result. With a standard reference in the National Building Codes, some people might think that this issue is addressed. A440.4 as it relates to new construction is undergoing updates currently, but it's fair to say that it doesn't represent a training guide or a training document. For the most part, the renovation market struggles with what the detail is appropriate for the product, the building, the location, and oftentimes installers are using their own details or the product supplier's details. With the increased focus on installations and installer training, do we have good options? Do we need, or dare I say, maybe regulation of installer training in the new construction and rental market is something that we need to be looking at. So today we're going to be talking with some industry colleagues with a focus on the renovation market to gain some insight into how the challenge of training, getting, and keeping quality installers is achieved. So our guests today, Shannon, Rafael, and James Baker from Heritage Renovations in London, Ontario. Tell us a bit about yourself, guys.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. So James and I run Heritage Renovations, which is a window and door installation company, as you mentioned, in London, Ontario. We've been in business for 31 years, so very well-established, reputable organization. We also are the most awarded company in Southwestern Ontario. So this year alone, we've won 7 separate awards, including the Consumer Choice Award for the 8th year in a row. We do all of our own installations. We also have supply-only sales where we work with contractors that are installing it themselves, and our service department as well. We do residential as well as commercial work.
Great, thanks. So Heritage is a new Fenestration Canada member, and of course we're happy to have them. But an even newer one is Andrew Walton over at Northwood Windows in North Bay, Ontario. So Andrew, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Northwood Window and Door Center, it's a family-owned and operated business. We've been around for 24 years. Kind of a similar setup to Heritage, except for I don't have all the awards hanging on the back of my wall. I got to work towards that. But yeah, otherwise, our main focus is on the renovation sector for windows and doors, specializing in Anderson wood windows as well as a lot of Ontario-based PVC products. And then we have the similar setup with full-time service staff and a new construction staff as well.
Great, thanks. So a couple of new members. Again, really happy to have you guys aboard, and hopefully, a long relationship with us. And then we have a couple of guys that are really old to the industry. They've been around for a very long time and participated with Fenestration Canada on numerous initiatives, and really happy to have them with us today. Jason Neal and Phil Lewin from Sodak in Cambridge. So Jason, tell us a bit about Sodak, what you guys are doing, and then maybe Phil can elaborate on his role within your organization.
Thanks, Terry. I don't think I've been around quite as long as Phil. Phil seems to be the godfather when we go to these events. But for myself, with Sodak for 5 years here, Siding and Window Dealer Association of Canada. We work with manufacturers, installers, suppliers, everything to do on the waterfall of getting a proper installation of windows, and working with government agencies to make sure that they're in line with what our installers can do and what they can provide to the consumer, and making sure that we're protecting the consumer at the same time from, say, not as reputable window install companies and or fly-by-nighters. So we tend to have everything fall under an umbrella on an install side that way. So we want to protect not only the consumer, but also our members under that umbrella. we do, one of the ways we do that is through our WindowWise program, and I will dive into that as we go forward here. And thanks for hosting us, Terry.
Thanks. Phil, tell us about your career, man. I know you've been doing this as long as any of us can remember.
Well, in 1986, I joined the window industry, and somebody looked at me and said, "You look like you got half a brain. There's this new thing called the A440. You ought to read it." And I did. And then I had some questions, and I wrote to the National Research Council, and a woman there named Madeline Rousseau sent me back about 6 inches of documents that I absorbed. And for some silly reason, from that point of view, people seem to think I'm a technical expert about Windows. I've worked mostly for manufacturers, often advising dealers on technical matters. I've spent half a dozen years supervising projects directly for a dealer. I am on the CSA 440.4 committee that is presently updating the installation A440.4. I write a somewhat technical column for Fenestration Review. I've occasionally advised and helped out with US magazines. And generally known as a troublemaker, and that probably will continue through this conversation.
That's great. We've been in the industry about the same amount of time. I actually started in '85, but the majority of my early days was spent in the West. So I wasn't familiar with Phil Lewin, but once I got involved with Fenestration Canada, well, that name came up a lot. So glad to have you with us, Phil. Appreciate your expertise and the input you're going to provide today. So we're going to chat a little bit about, again, installation, of course, and training and installers, et cetera. So in Canada, there's few regional options for external in-person or online training. I'm not aware of any that are offering in-person training on a national level. I think currently, Jason, you already touched on it, the most well-known program across the country and certainly in the Ontario, Quebec region comes from SODAC and the WindowWise program. So can you give us a bit more sort of history of that program, where it came from, and what it offers to manufacturers and installers looking for that training, and what you guys are doing to take that training outside of a more central Canada sort of focus?
For the history part, I'm gonna throw that over to Phil because he was here right at the start of it. He can talk best to that. I can give you sort of where we've been and where we're going, where we're at and where we're going. But if Phil could do the preamble of what was the start of it and how did it come to fruition?
I can jump in on that if you'd like. In Ontario, in bad economic times, the joke is that any laid off worker from the auto industry with a pickup truck suddenly becomes a window installer. And that kind of was a difficulty for companies that were really doing what they could to do things properly. Proper is doing things proper really was something relatively new. What is proper? I mean, the main school for window installation is what I call the Tim Hortons University, where Pete sees Joe and Joe is having a coffee and doesn't have a job, and Pete says, "Well, you can be my assistant because George is going to let me do all the single windows now." So every bad habit was translated down to the next person who came in the industry. The dealers who made up the board of directors of SODAC wanted to differentiate themselves. And they wanted to differentiate themselves primarily by showing that they were installing windows correctly. So they created people like Doug Beingister, created the WindowWise program, and did a lot of there was research done. Not only did they use the best methods they knew, but they actually hired a consultant to take their methods into a lab and test installation. That hadn't been done. People test windows, but specifically however the window is installed in the box is ignored. So that's really how the program started. From there, of course, when they put it together, they wanted to actually have some hands-on training. So to be a Windowise installer, there is a one-day course that you must take with a test at the end of it. But really the emphasis of the course is to make sure that an installer who is already working for a company has the opportunity to learn the best techniques available. Is that enough?
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then I can sort of take it into where we're at and where we're going forward. So where we're at is, keep developing with government agencies like NRCan. We're listed on the NRCan site as well with that work with Green Ontario using the Windowise program. Now the premise to that was great, but it became a bit of a runaway train on the government side. But we'll leave that as be. We keep developing it to go forward in the sense that the manufacturers love it. And I can speak more to the manufacturing side. Is that's what we have here with Fenestration Canada mostly, is that they love the Windowise program because it's being policed when their windows are being installed. They see that there's about an 80 to 90% reduction in service calls when there is a Windowise certified dealer installing their windows, which they love. And then to piggyback onto that, going forward, we continue to work with, and I know Shannon and James were involved with this as well, like with Fanshawe College, but then also with NRCan, Greener Homes, with different federal programs. We continue to push that forward for our members, as well as with our Windowise platform, because it's not only just a training platform. It's also, we do audits on site. We have those audits available to homeowners. So if somebody's installing, they can see that. So it's a full program, and that's why our manufacturers love that. And the installers love it too, because it's a bit of a pride that, hey, we're doing something better than the other guys are. So, when they're going out to sell their own windows and doors, they're using those audits and talking about the Windowise program. It makes it easier for them to explain why they're better than just the regular non-certified installer out there.
Right. Thanks, Jason. So much to Sodak's and Windowise's chagrin, not everybody uses the Windowise program, even though I'm sure that they would like them to. So, not everybody's using external programs for training. Some train their own staff to the details of their own products and the specific projects that they do. Now, Shannon and James, I know that you guys have done some training, but Jason mentioned Fanshawe College in London, and I believe that you guys have been integral and instrumental in working with that program, or maybe to develop that program. Can you kind of share, what that has been like and what you guys are doing for your installation teams currently?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely any program that exists, whether it's Windowise, something internal, anything regional, or possibly in the future on a national level, is fantastic. Any training, any certification, any extra education anyone can get is phenomenal. Every little bit helps. Here at Heritage, we do a lot of our own in-house training, and we start from ground level in terms of looking at architectural manuals, designs, specs from manufacturers. We work on models and specs that we have within our facility. We do on-site training on actual installs with mirroring apprenticeships and things of that nature. And that's worked well for us as an individual, but we always like to think of future potential in the industry. So we really coordinated with one of our manufacturers and government and spearheaded a collegiate level installation program. So from the ground up, from funding sources, creating the actual content itself, we work with Fanshawe College here in London to develop a window door installer program from the ground up, teaching them things from techniques, product information, even things like such as soft skills and things that they would need on the field dealing with customers and interacting. So it was a huge success. We had tremendous feedback from the participants, tremendous knowledge gains, and in terms of the job skills that they were able to leave versus when they came in. So it was a phenomenal program. Fanshawe was so successful with that program that they are going to carry that forward and continue with future programs as well. So I think that's really, from our perspective here at Heritage, that's really what the industry needs for future, is something at that level, something that can be scaled from that style of a program regionally and nationally.
And just
So,
to piggyback
sorry, Shannon, go ahead.
Just to piggyback quickly onto that, one of the things that was successful about the program is that it was an all-day training course once a week for 3 months. So they learned how to do absolutely everything. They were bending, capping. We built this huge installation wall. They were installing windows, doors, patio doors right into the RSOs. Some RSOs were perfect and beautiful, some were not, and they had to, do some more complex thinking in those. So they literally did absolutely everything, removing them, putting them in. They had old windows that they were taking out, and they had new windows that they were putting in. So they really got the full taste of what the job was. The wall was actually built outside on the property at Fanshawe College. So because of that, they weren't babied, I guess. They were outside. It was in the middle of winter. The course ran outside November, December, January, and wrapped up in the beginning of February. So they went out during some of the coldest, harshest months here in southwestern Ontario. And the people that graduated, they had one of the highest success ratios for the graduates in the history of an inaugural program like this. So it was very successful, but they really had a lot of practice hands-on as well as in the class.
So that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that. So this is like you said, a 1 day per week, full day for 3 months. So 12 sessions, 13 sessions. Really? That's really, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. Good to know. I'm going to have to be talking to those folks. So appreciate that. So Andrew over at Northwood there, if I'm not mistaken, I think that you do internal installer training for your people. Just curious about, what's behind that? What's your reasoning for doing it? Is it better control? And the process that you're using to do that training, why and how's it working for you?
Well, I think our goal is the same as everyone's, which is you want to install a product with minimal problems and minimal callbacks. If the customer's happy, then the manufacturer's happy, we're happy, everyone's getting paid, and it's going to do nothing but help your reputation long-term to give the customer the best product you can. And what we were finding is that there was such a variation between our different suppliers, between the recommended course of installation, and then marry that with, we can cover a lot of problems because our business is around Lake Nipissing, and Lake Nipissing is this great big shallow lake that gives all sorts of crazy conditions similar to Simcoe area, right? So it just trashes windows and doors frequently. And we had to realize, okay, we need to install this differently. It has to be as close to perfect as we can. So in saying that, we decided to institute our own program, and it started as the Tim Hortons apprenticeship, as Phil was saying.
Yeah.
And it worked its way up to, we built walls inside of our shop. It's actually in our warehouse. We have 4 test walls, and each one is the same kind of concept. We've got a trapezoid wall. We've got an outer level patio door wall, just challenge areas. And we use it first to, anytime someone wants to try out to become a head installer at our shop, we make them put some product in, and we see, do you actually know what you're talking about? Because a lot of guys are contractors who have installed windows but aren't window installers. And then that leads to our own internal apprenticeship system that we developed, and we just took the best of each program that we saw and married that to our own experiences. And the challenge is that certainly the climate's different all over Ontario, so what works for us may not work for someone else, and vice versa. So I really like the idea of that Fanshawe College system, and if it could be incorporated into like a quick 2-week, I send my guys down for 2 weeks and off they go. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, you touched on something that's really interesting. Is you deal as a dealer, you have multiple suppliers, and oftentimes suppliers provide installation detailing for their products. Are those a challenge? Sometimes are you faced with, let's face it, not all manufacturers understand the actual installation of a product. That's not sort of their forte sometimes. So how do you deal with that with a manufacturer that says, well, our product needs to go in like this, but maybe your details might be something a bit different? Do you just, how do you sort of dance through that conflict?
Well, the general rule is you take what they're requiring and then you go one or two steps above. If they're saying that, if they want their fastening points at certain points, fine. And if they say that it has to be backed by shims, that's great. And then, you add on the buttering of the shims, or some manufacturers want you to use a certain through wall flashing system, which is awesome for new construction, but might be interesting in certain retrofit applications. So you just, at each point, you have to kind of, you have to take what they're saying, you have to go better, but you also have to adapt to the situation. And one way we get around is we'll document interesting situations. So if it's a scenario where we couldn't install it perfectly to spec, but it was the best given the situation without tearing down the exterior facade, we'll take pictures, we'll document it, and we'll put it in the file in case there's any service after the fact. Because it's just, we're not always working in new construction. So I'd love to use the latest in flashing technologies prior to the exterior going on, but it just doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So Phil, I'd be interested in your take on that. You've obviously been around for a while. You've seen, a myriad of details from different suppliers and manufacturers. Our manufacturers, and again, a very general statement, are they really up to speed on providing installation details when it comes to complex envelopes and renovation details that are unique and always changing? Is it realistic to expect a window manufacturer to understand those nuances?
Well, the answer to that is, in many cases, no. Manufacturers, many of whom have an engineer who's basically a factory engineer, and often will double in terms of going out when there's a service issue to try to determine what was missing from the installation. But I don't think that manufacturers in general, to my experience, and Terry, you might have different experiences on this, really have a high technical, detailed approach. I think that while even the A440.4 says that if a manufacturer has a different approach for their particular window, that should override the A440.4. But a lot of the times what I see with manufacturers is that they've copied to some degree something that was done by another manufacturer who copied something from another manufacturer, particularly prevalent in a lot of the vinyl industry. Not so prevalent in the aluminum industry because there a lot of the stuff does involve engineering. I'm sorry if I sound somewhat cynical about this, but that has tended to be what I've seen from my vantage point.
No, I think it's really valid, cynical or not. If we look at, we're talking renovation mostly here, but if we look at new construction in province of BC, the building code actually says to use the window manufacturer's installation details. And we see a pretty wide range of what those details look like, and often not followed very well. So, I think there is reason to be a bit cynical about, information that comes from a window manufacturer. And again, a very general statement. Lots of them have very knowledgeable people when it comes to envelopes and structural detailing, and they do a good job. But to rely, 100% on those details, I think, is a bit of a challenge. So anyway, energy efficiency, of course, everybody knows that's the buzz these days. We're all looking at, more efficient windows. There's programs out there, pushing energy efficiency, which, I think it's fair to say we can agree that's a good thing. But I'm wondering, for energy efficiency in renovation buildings, are you guys seeing any sort of new details? Are you looking at things to make that installation more energy efficient that maybe you weren't doing 5, 10, 15 years ago? Are things changing from an energy focus? Do you see anything happening there? So maybe, James, maybe we'll start with you. Anything on that?
Yeah, from an installation perspective, I mean, we're always looking to do better than we were last year or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So we're constantly looking at different sealant products, different foam products, things of that nature to substitute and support the product that we are installing. But I would say the main leaps and bounds of increase in energy efficiency really comes from the base product, the window, the door, those types of products. We are always focused on better water penetration barriers, better flashing seals, things like that. But the real leaps and bounds comes from the main product itself, we found.
Okay. Something that we see as the energy efficiency discussion moves forward is some people are pushing windows deeper into the wall, trying to line up the insulation line of the window with the insulation line of the wall. I don't know how prevalent that is in renovation, but I'm wondering, do you see that? Are customers looking for, those kinds of details when you get into the really high performance designs, dealing with older walls? Is that even feasible? Andrew, do you see any of that, that discussion happening to find the best sort of spot for where that window should be in a wall, or is it pretty much status quo?
Well, from a customer standpoint, it's always what's going to get my bills down and what's going to eliminate condensation. And that's what's led more than anything else to us moving the window, further interior to the wall and trying to get the condensation situation under control. It's a big reason why we frequently don't use a brick mold from the manufacturer in our retrofit installations, because I just can't get deep enough. So that's why we're almost always flashing. And then triple glaze has been a godsend. Like we used to do maybe 10% triple glaze product, but when the Green Ontario program came out, of course we were pushing the majority in triple. And that winter, after having just a crazy busy summer and fall, that winter our service calls were down tremendously, and it was the worst winter I could remember. And just the performance of the windows, night and day difference. So from our standpoint, maybe the customers aren't asking for it, but even without those programs, we're pushing triple glaze, trying to get the window into the wall a little bit, and also keep that consideration of keeping the weight of that triple glaze window onto the bearing point of the wall instead of pushing it out. Because if you use your standard brick mold, that window's sitting over top of nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Terry, I know we're talking about Ontario, so I can relate this to northern Ontario, and just dealing with some of the manufacturers / installers out of the Northwest Territory area. They're putting in quads up north, like way up. They're putting in quad. They just say that it's what they need to do, and it's.
I believe it. We're doing a session tomorrow on triple glazing with the guys over in Atlantic, Canada, but it's more about, not the installation per se, it's more about the handling. So talking about triple glazing, and Andrew, I'm glad you brought that up. Jason, are you guys doing anything in your WindowWise program that's going to specifically address, the challenges around, let's face it, triple glazing, 50% more glass, obviously gets a lot heavier.
Yeah. So when we're training, we're talking to it. We hey, single pane linear foot is $1 or is about £1 per linear foot, and then you go to double or to a dual pane, that's two pounds. But then when you go to a triple, it goes to 4 pounds. So we're telling them to be very cognizant of that. So if you're putting in a big bay window and it's got a triple in it, it's not a 2-person job maybe anymore. You might have to have 3-4 guys out there to get it in right, so that it's set properly. And that's something we definitely talk to when we're doing our WindowWise course. Because a lot of people don't know that with just the weight. They know it's heavier, but they don't really know how much heavier. So it's 1-to-1, 2-to-2, and when it goes to a triple, it's 4 pounds. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, Shannon, what's your guys' take on triples these days? Are you seeing a dramatic increase in demand? And are you having to, to work with your installation teams to understand, appropriate practices when you get into some of the larger triple products?
It's funny, in London and in Southwestern Ontario, there's not as much talk about triple. There's times with government rebate programs where it ebbs and flows, but typically most companies in our area are just doing double. When we are doing triple, they get extremely heavy. So we actually, for installation, when we get into those bigger windows is we'll, take the glass out and then put the glass back in when the window's installed, just for safety. Because in our company, we're super go. It's hard to send other people to a job site. So we've kind of done some workarounds in that sense. I don't know if you want to add anything, Session.
Yeah, like what we'll do is we'll really focus, even if we're just talking about double, we really focus on some of these windows in homes today are just getting larger and larger. So we're always conscious of glass weight, stress on the teams, and things of that nature. Even if you're physically able to do it as a 2-man installation team, how much does that diminish your capacity to continue installing rest that week, that month? So we'll focus, like Shannon says, about sealed units being shipped loose. We'll do mulling on site. So if we have a big bay bow window, 5 light, we'll mull that together on site. So we're doing 5 smaller windows. And we really work with our different manufacturers to find out what their different weight ratings are for sizing and ratios like that when we're actually building these right at the quote stage for the customer. So we're thinking about what's best for the customer, what's best for the environment and energy, but also the people that have to put these in, what's the best and safest for that.
Yeah. If you're not dealing with lots of triples now, you will be. Sorry?
It's happening now with the new rebate for sure.
Yeah. We definitely see a dramatic increase. Other than the current BC renovation rebate program that references the BC best practice guide for installation, it also includes an installer exam requirement. I'm not aware of any other programs currently that are requiring specific training components or exams, certifications, and that includes the current National Greener Homes program, where there's no specific criteria for trained installers. So I'm curious about your opinions on that. If you feel that there should be criteria for installation of renovation products for rebate programs. So I'm just going to go around the room on this, get your guys' take on it, whether or not you think that any of these government-driven programs should also have some form of evaluation of the installation of those products. So again, Shannon, I'll come back to you on that one.
I think it is a really great idea because there's a lot of variation, and we see that we get calls from customers that have had poor installations and they come to us and say, what can you do to help us? So there's a wide variety, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong. I think with Green On, which was a previous rebate program that did require that, it was fantastic. The only thing, and Jason alluded to this earlier, is how quickly you're able to get that certification when these rebate programs happen, because they come on very fast. The demand is right there. I know when Green On happened, it was announced just right before Christmas. James actually flew to Ottawa and then came back after the course, because that was the only place that he could get that training to be able to register the company for the incentive. And then people that didn't do that, they were, 6 weeks, 8 weeks able to even register for the program, and it just got away. So I think with proper planning, having some kind of accreditation like that is fantastic because it protects the customer, and in terms protects the reputation of that rebate program as well. So it's a win-win, but it just has to be planned out properly.
Yeah. Andrew, do you see that the same way, do you think?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the concept that they have a rebate program that anyone can just throw the window in makes absolutely no sense. I mean, unless the windows are all fixed and flashing no longer matters, I can't see how that's even remotely justifiable. Green On was fantastic for the sense of, it also pushed the business into people who are already, paying into HST, paying all their, the business that are doing it right, as opposed to the back of the truck cash economy. So I thought that was a great thing about Green On as well, and I would have liked to have seen the Greener Homes go that route. But I also agree that the administration side is a nightmare in terms of just making sure that we're all trained up, making sure that the government's giving the grant back accordingly. Like I do like with this new grant that it's not on the window dealer to do all the paperwork for the customer, because I mean I had to hire 2 administrators last time to handle Green On's paperwork. And the first answer was always no. Like you had to reapply usually 2 or 3 times before you got anywhere, regardless of whether it was right or not.
So Jason, I'm fairly confident. I know your opinion on that, but Phil, I'd like to ask you. Here we are. We've been talking about installation training for forever. Let's face it. Probably since you got in the business. why don't we have a national installer training program? What's your take there? Why does it not happen?
If you look at it from a trades point of view, electrical, they have it. Well, you can burn down a house. Somebody can die from being shocked, not having their ticket. They look at it that way. Plumbing, they look at it, hey, you flood the whole house out. They just look at it, well, if a window falls out, it just sort of falls out. They don't look at it as a high risk. But what they don't understand is, they want to hit these carbon targets. And this is the biggest thing to get to do it is windows and doors, along with insulation. But I mean, windows and doors, it's huge. They want to hit the carbon targets, but they're not really putting any teeth behind it. And I don't want to get too political on here, but there's just a lot of good lip service going on, and they're not putting anything in behind it to really drive it. And I know, Terry, you and I have been on some calls with, and I know Stefan's there as well, is the energy auditors when they wanted to, how do we reduce the footprint? And well, we're gonna have the energy auditors for the greener homes. Well, there's not enough energy auditors around to do this, and they're 6 to 8 weeks behind on getting an energy audit done. And then you add on top of that, you're 16 to 24 weeks to get your windows done. Where we've went to them, Terry, and we've said is like, if you actually put in you have to have a certified installer program. Why do you need an energy audit if they're already, they're doing it properly this way? Mm-hmm. So the other thing the government is afraid of, Terry, and I can speak to this, in Shannon, you were sort of talking about, is to the chagrin of us. Yeah, we don't want everyone in window-wise. We don't want the bad people in. Green Ontario said you have to let everyone in. It's a government program.
Right.
There was at least 30% of the people we did not want in the program. So back to that point, the government will not want to say you can't be in the program. So I don't know if they wanted to sign off on having a certified that way. That's, I think, one of the big things why they're afraid of, Terry, because then all of a sudden if you don't let 30% of them in, they're saying you're killing my business, the government this, the government that. That's a big piece of it. Yeah. It might, if we went to the government and said something along a grandfathered, then that might be something they would look at and do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So Phil, to develop a national in-person hands-on training program, probably I certainly don't have the money to do that. I mean, you might be a little better off there. Is it realistic for anybody to go and develop a robust program to support renovation programs that come and go? Is it realistic that we could see somebody actually do that?
Well, let's start with the fact that putting together on paper a program for training is not rocket science. I mean, you've got people on this call that have, to some degree or not, done that. Then implementing it, though, has a cost to it. Who's going to pay the cost? Is it going to be the dealer? Is it going to be the would-be installer? Offering programs like that through Fanshawe, which, SODAC as well has been very involved with talking to them about working with them to adapt aspects of WindowWise. The key is, yes, that's all doable. It can be done. Not necessarily one organization coast to coast doing it. But the real issue to me is that the only way to evaluate whether somebody has earned their ticket, as Jason called it, in the window and door industry is to inspect the actual work that they do. And, someone starts out as an apprentice, someone gets the opportunity to show that they qualify as an installer and their work is checked. And if they show that they're capable of doing good work, then they get a ticket. That to me is somewhat doable, but the government would have to be behind it. The problem in all these cases is who's going to fund it. And until you get to a point where it is an industry norm, you won't be able to get segments of the industry to pay for it. And by that, I'd say, no one's going to be the first guy to blow a lot of money putting this program together. Apologies to people who are actually doing that, but overall, in general, they're going to want the government to support it and to show that when they do it, they're going to have the benefit of it at the expense of people who only learned at Tim Hortons.
Yeah. I've long been, vocal about without pull, it's really difficult to develop, anything significant. So I heard Nicole last week that some companies shy away from providing and supporting training, be it installers or whatever, as it can lead to trained staff leaving for quote unquote greener pastures. So I'm curious to you guys, your take on this. Do employees train and leave or train to leave? Jason.
I believe that's a myth. And I can say, because I talk to a lot of dealers across the country, I believe that's a myth. The big key piece I always hear is they just leave for better money, better hours, better work-life balance. They're not leaving because you've trained them and actually helped them out. I haven't heard that. I could be wrong, but I like I said, I'm behind the desk here dealing with dealers across the country, and I haven't heard that.
Shannon, do you experience any of that? People train and leave?
No. I think with us, we really strive to get the best possible people, and we treat them like gold, every single person that works here, because the experience, the knowledge, the experience for the customer as a result of all of that, that's what makes our company special. And we don't have a lot of people that are training and then going somewhere else. We really say, every single person that works here, we want them to work here forever, which I'm sure everyone on this call would say. But we really try to give people the best experience, which includes ongoing training to better themselves. And that's part of the reason why I think that they are interested in continuing to stay here, because they do receive that ongoing training and support from us.
Yeah. Good employees are gold. I really like that comment. That's great.
I could throw something in here.
Sure, Phil.
Yeah. Employees leave primarily, in my mind, for two reasons. One is because their conditions of work, be it pay, hours, quality of the products they're working with, the people they're working for, they find something better. And the other reason they leave is because their work is really inferior and they're getting out before it catches up with them.
That's an interesting point. Andrew, do you see any of this? Do you hear any of it?
Yeah, I think maybe in 20 years we've had one person leave to go somewhere else. Once you take the time and the effort and the money to train someone and invest in them and treat them correctly, they don't want to go anywhere. Similar to Heritage, we certainly pay our people well. We treat them well. We create a good environment. We don't overwork them. Like there's a lot of thought to it, because we all know how hard it is to come across a really good installer. And the concept that you would train them and they just bail for an extra $2 or $3 an hour, I think is kind of silly. I think it's more to do with the product, honestly. I think if you're giving them, properly measured product, and they go to work every day and they enjoy it and the jobs go as smooth as they can. I mean, it's construction, that never goes right. But if it goes as smooth as it can, they come back happy and they're fulfilled. And I think that's much more important than any other factor.
I tend to somewhat agree with you there, Andrew. The only thing I would just challenge you on is that it's just different geographies. Toronto, London, Ottawa might be in Mississauga, Brampton, where there's hundreds of window dealers. They could bounce around. If they could make $2 more, that they're jumping over for that. Whereas you're gonna have a little bit more loyalty, I think, in the outlying areas. With that. And Terry, the other thing, Terry, the other quick thing on that too is you were talking about, James, you were talking about, using foams and proper and sealants and so forth and so on. There's a real difference between, subs and people that actually work for your company on what product they're using to install, because we find when there's somebody subcontracting, they won't go that extra mile to put in because they're paying for their own tape, sealants, foams and such. They'll put in the bare minimum. So that goes back to a piece where you're talking about, okay, if we want to get to that level of efficiency, I think you can look at it like who actually has their own crews and who's subbing.
Andrew, did you have another comment there?
Yeah, the only thing I would, first of all, I do agree that we don't have the same regional challenges, certainly. And if anything, people are flocking more up north for like a quality of life scenario. We're seeing that quite a bit. So I can't speak to the money facet that way. The subs conversation is totally correct, but we fixed that issue a long time ago by, yes, we sub them for labor, but we control all the materials that go on site.
That's great.
And the amounts, and there's zero penalty for using too much. I'll never get mad because they took an extra case of foam or caulking or whatever, even if it means that they're using a little bit of it on their house on the weekend. I don't care. I care more that it gets done correctly.
Yep.
And that's how I fix that issue, and it works pretty good. But you are correct. The more that they're entrusted in your organization, especially salaried workers or benefited workers, they stick around and they do a good job.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the last 18 months or so has really shed a light on, keeping those great employees and making sure people are happy, and it's not just money, things like that. A lot of it is work life, working for good people, good understanding of what the company goals are. So that's great to hear that it sounds like you guys see that and you're not maybe experiencing, some of these situations where, there are those that do train and leave. I've certainly heard people talk about it. So that's that's all I've got as far as sort of my questions to the group. Maybe we'll just take one last spin around the table and some final comments from you guys. So Shannon, James, sort of last thoughts on where you're at with installation training and if there's anything in the future that you think is going to cause you some grief, maybe.
Yeah, like I said, earlier, I think we here at Heritage are very passionate about developing that sector of the industry. So working with different partners like Fanshawe College to promote training, promote growth, rather than just focus on our own internal here. I think that's really the future. And then as more dealers and more networks combine forces in that aspect, I really think it is going to change the landscape, improve it for everyone from a dealer to a supplier to manufacturer. So I think that really is the future, and that's where our focus is.
Shannon, any last thoughts?
I would just say, the pipeline of people that are coming in the future, that's really what we're looking for. I know a lot of the people that we work with, it's fathers that have passed it down to their sons or cousins that do it. Like it's very passed down from generation to generation job. And what James and I were really excited about with this Fanshawe training program was taking somebody that didn't know really much about this and really inspiring them and say, hey, look at this fantastic lifelong career that you can have, and getting new people engaged into the industry. And that's why this Fanshawe thing where they did 25 students the first, they're just about to do another one again with 25 students. That's 50 people that weren't involved in the industry last year. So that kind of pipeline and growing that, and maybe they don't come out of the program as a lead ready to go, but they come out with a heck of a lot of experience, hands-on experience, working on RSOs, bending aluminum, all these great skills, and then they fast track where they're learning and where they're going. And that to us is something that's so exciting. If that could be rolled out at 10 colleges across Canada, it just builds that pipeline. I know for us too at Heritage, we did an orientation day. All the students actually came to Heritage and we did training on what the jobs look like, what the career paths are, how to build a resume and how to get involved in the industry. And people had no idea how much money window and door installations pay. Like it's such a lucrative job, and people just don't understand that and they don't know that. And the more people that know that, the more interested and the bigger that pipeline of interested people for the future grows.
Totally agree. Andrew, last thoughts?
Yeah, I would echo the sentiment that if we could find a program, if the 1 day a week is amazing if I had that at a local college. And if it has to be a central or southern Ontario thing, then maybe a 2-week program that gets you on your way towards an Ontario-based or national ticket program. I would love to be able to brag that my installers are all ticketed and have X amount of experience, and then we can have our own apprenticeship program that's proper as opposed to our own, made up one. And then I would like to see it partnered with a WindowWise type program. Like if we could see something come together, and maybe naturally it's not going to work because I'm sure installing Windows in BC is entirely different than the climate I get in Northern Ontario. But if we could even get it at a provincial level, that'd be amazing. And it would do nothing but help the quality of our jobs and then the industry, and certainly take away a bit of the black eye of the guys working out of the back of their trucks and just slam the windows in for a case of beer. That would be ideal, and take some of that responsibility off the dealers. I'd love to be able to just send my guys to the manufacturer for orientation, send them for a yearly refresher on installation, as well as continuing their growth and apprenticeship.
So Fenestration Canada is working on this. We are trying to develop partnerships with trainers and to develop a national program. Phil, are we headed there? Are we headed for a national installation with regional differences training program that can address all of these problems?
Well, if you allow me 3 points. I think I already said that the difficulty with a national program is going to be trying to operate a system from one central location. It's going to have to be somewhat regionalized, even if the overall umbrella has techniques and values and materials that are shared. One problem that really hasn't been raised in this, my second point, is that recruiting the right people into being a window installer as a quality way to spend the rest of their life's employment is really tough. I think that there is, I think that people would think of being an electrician or a plumber higher up in a category than telling your new girlfriend or boyfriend that you're a window installer. We've not done a very good job at selling the concept of a professional window installer to get people into the industry. The third thing that I would say, and last thing, just to warn you, it will be the last thing, is, and this is where I've had a problem with some of the efforts that have been brought into the issue, is, to me, a written test is a joke. In fact, I will say that when the CSA started the FIT program, the first 20 people to pass the test, I believe, were salespeople who wanted to be able to tell their customers that they were window installers and show their certificate, and that they'd never installed a window in their lives. Most Polish and Russian and wherever they're from these days, installers would not pass a test. It really needs, as I said, it needs to be emphasis on actual performance in the field before someone gets a ticket. That's everything.
I agree. Jason, any last thoughts?
Yeah, obviously, Terry, you and I continue to push with Stefan, with the government, many different ways that we do need to have a certified installer program signed off by the government. Until that happens, we will have a lot of black market still that will, our boat will only float as high as they'll allow us to. Substandard installs and fly-by-nighters wreck our industry and give us a bad name. So that is something that we need to push as well. And that was something that we pushed when it was the Green Ontario program. Is, hey, if we're registering these jobs, you're going to get rid of the black market, you're going to have proper installs, and you're going to increase your tax base. So that's something that, it's not just the install, but it's everything else that comes along with it that the government should be looking at.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm sure that we all have horror stories, but very early on in my career, I actually delivered windows. That's how I got in this madness. I pulled up to a job site and got out of the truck, and the supervisor came running up, yelling and screaming at me that our patio door was a piece of junk and the panel kept falling out. Every time they put it in, it would fall out. He's been doing this forever. You guys have got junk. So I wandered over and took a look and pointed at the drain holes at the head of the door. and walked away. So, just because you've been doing it forever doesn't mean you're doing it right. So we definitely need to help help the industry get better at it. So I don't know, Steph, if we got any comments or questions coming in from outside. If so, we can take a few minutes for that, but nothing there. Okay, you know what? We're gonna wrap it up then. So thank you to Shannon and James from Heritage. Really appreciate you guys participating. Andrew, great to talk to you and have you involved. Really happy you're with us at FenCan. It was a great chat we had there a few weeks ago, and hopefully you and I can engage some more on things moving forward. Jason, really appreciate the work with you, what you guys are doing, and of course Phil. I always love talking with Phil. We might not agree on every item, but it's great. The passion that you bring to our industry is really great, and I really like your participation in things like this. So appreciate you guys being with me today. Thanks for the input. Good conversation. Just to wrap it up, I'd like to thank Roto Hardware, our sponsor for the regional week. They did a showcase earlier today, and there's a product called Swiss Air, which is really interesting item. You might want to check out that from the Swiss Spacer people. Tomorrow morning is our Quebec session on supply chain, 10 o'clock Eastern, and of course JSA Machinery Showcase at noon tomorrow. And then we have our Atlantic session on triple glazing, 2 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, followed by our trivia contest, 4 o'clock Eastern, where you can win some really fabulous prizes. So hopefully there's room, so you should sign up for that. It'll be a lot of fun. And of course, I'm really excited to tell everybody that we are live at Windor in Toronto, November 17th and 18th. So we'd love to see everybody there. It'd be so great to bump elbows or shake hands or whatever they're going to allow us to do when we can get face to face. So thank you everybody so much. Appreciate your participation, and we'll be talking